one world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. Tonight is Wednesday, May 2nd, 2012, the day after May Day. And yesterday everybody was focused on the May Day festivities that were going on around the country with all these protests, and everybody was, oh, it's for Workers' Day, and, you know, it used to be about immigrant labor, and people, this isn't even about communism. Does anybody even know the history of communism? If you don't, I suggest you read a book called None Dare Call It Conspiracy by Gary Allen, so you can understand a little bit about where Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto came from. He didn't write it. It was Adam Weishaupt's writings rewritten for that more modern age, because it was about 80 to 100 years after Weishaupt's writings that stuff was written, maybe a little more than 100 years. In the book, None Dare Call It Conspiracy, Gary Allen gets into it. Go look it up. I'm sure you can find an ebook version or even a physical copy of it and purchase it and read it. I suggest you do. In fact, if you want, contact me at email me at contactdtrh@yahoo.com. contactdtrh@yahoo.com. Put in the subject title ebook copy of None Dare Call It Conspiracy, and I'll send it to you. People have done this to me in the past. I've had them email me, and I've sent them out the copy of the book. So feel free, and I will send you a copy of the book, and you will understand what communism really is. And you'll understand why May 1st is celebrated, where the term May Day, why it has negative tones to it, because it is the birthday of the Bavarian Illuminati. 1776, May 1st, 1776. Created by Adam Weishaupt. That's what 1776 on the bottom of the pyramid means. Now, I have to do a whole show about this on its own, so I'm not going to get into it tonight. But I wanted to cover that really quick, because I didn't see many people discussing that yesterday. In fact, I didn't see anybody discussing it yesterday. So this is a little important. People need to understand communism in itself is a red herring, because it's not really communism. It's Illuminism. This one world government, you know, where this group of elite, this inner cabal has everything, and the rest of us are either exterminated or serfs. That's what this is all about. All right. Being said, I want to get into tonight's show. Back by popular demand is my good friend, Carolyn Rose Goyda. And she was on last Friday, and we were talking about the Fourth Reich. We got into Admiral Byrd and stuff. And the last half hour, we started covering the harassment that she's been through. And I didn't think that we really gave it enough time. So we had talked on air about having her back on, and I brought her back on tonight. We're going to donate as much time as we need to of the first hour so she can go over from the beginning what she's been through. Why. First, I'm going to have her tell you why she's going through this, and then what she's been through. And then hopefully this stuff, by hearing her story, there's a lot of people out there that go through this type of thing too, and they feel alone. And they feel like no one else is going through this. And hopefully they'll see that, you're not alone. And after hearing what she's been through, you'll see just how much moxie she has and why I have a lot of respect for her. And Carolyn's a tough lady. She's been through hell and back. And she still has a very awesome, charming personality about her. So we could learn a lot from her. So without further ado, let me welcome back to the show, Carolyn. Carolyn, welcome back.
Hey, what's up, Popeye? I got to say, I know I'm supposed to talk about me, but I have to comment on what you said because I can't resist. But I agree totally with you about the May Day thing, that people, let's face it, they don't teach economic or labor history in college, much less, junior high or high school. I mean, unfortunately, most of the young people grew up hating unions because all they could do is just bitch about, I got to pay some union dues. And they have no idea that people got killed and people got beat up by paid Pinkertons, which are no different than the ninja-looking crazy people that come out to meet Occupy and other folks. The Pinkertons met union guys and busted heads and killed people, and people literally died for 40-hour work week to get child labor laws in place and to get things like don't lock people into buildings so they don't burn to death if there's a fire in a garment factory, which happened. And there's a photo album on my page about that. And it's like people just really don't understand. And when you're talking about how communism is basically, like you said, a red herring, it's just like the false flags. People don't understand. They create these things. And how many times we have to really just, we're preaching to the choir a little bit here, but we got to finally get these people to understand that the same people that funded Lenin are the same people that funded Hitler, are the same people that are currently funding in the last election McCain and Obama. And then now it's probably going to be Romney and Obama. This is the same Wall Street bankers, and these are fascist corporate gangsters. We're not anti-capitalists. It'd be nice to finally have some free market, fair market capitalism in my lifetime. I mean, right now, we've had nothing but fascism. The Nazi cultists surrendered and gave up Germany, but the Nazi fascism has won the peace. And people don't realize. And a perfect thing, when Brett's here now with me, and he's helping out. He helped a friend of mine, went to St. Louis to get some things. And while they were gone, I was working on some photo albums, and I put up a couple things. And one was, we're going to talk about in the second hour, about how they've given a shoot-down order in Chicago. If anybody messes around with the NATO summit, which why is that here in Chicago anyway?
But how absurd is that? There's a shoot-down order on anything that's not a commercial aircraft. So if someone's flying around in their Cessna, and maybe, I know the FAA put out this warning, but okay, there are people that may not have seen it or heard it, right? So say someone's floating around, or they accidentally go off course by a quarter of a mile or half a mile. You're going to have F-16s bearing down on you to shoot you out of the sky. And I got a question. Where were these same fighter pilots 10 years ago in 9/11? Where were you guys?
They were unarmed. There was an unarmed because there was a faux war game going on at the exact same time, saying that there were going to be hijacked planes threatening to bash buildings, and nobody will even face that fact that there is no way that whether it's Obama or someone else in that cave that's praying for 72 virgins, though why anybody would pray for virgins and not 72 magnificent hookers is beyond me. But it's like, are you kidding me? They had these planes all unarmed, and the only ones they flew into D.C. were the ones that were the farthest away and could never possibly have got there in time to stop a plane. And, and it's like, the thing with Chicago is, you and I said this, and both of us do not want to see, and we're not wishing any, violent insurrection or violent rebellion. We're very, we'd rather see a passive solution to all of this. But it would almost be the perfect solution to have some rich guy in his Cessna make a boo-boo and get shot down, and have some rich guy's son or somebody be on the plane, and so that maybe one of them wake up and realize that, you know what, they're just as vulnerable as the rest of us.
Exactly. Maybe then they'll see it. But you know what? It's how effed up is it that it's gonna take somebody getting shot down in their own civilian aircraft to wake up people to what's going on around them? Insanity. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Carolyn, I want to get into it because we have a tendency to get sidetracked, and we're going to get sidetracked again anyway, and we're going to go all over the place tonight like we normally do. I love having you on. But I want to cover, and I know you hate to focus on you because you are not a very selfish person by any means, but I'm going to force you to focus on you for a little while because people do want to know exactly what I call the harassment of Carolyn Rose Goyda. That's what I've titled it because what you've gone through is just horrific. So let's give a little bit of background really quick as to why you're receiving this harassment, and then we can go into what you've gone through and everything else. So go ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, the first 2 minutes, I'm going to finish my previous sentence, okay, because we were talking before the commercial break. What I wanted to say is go on my Facebook page, Carolyn Rose Goyda. You'll see some things about the NATO shoot-down. You'll see some other things that Popeye's had on his page, so please look on his website. He's got a lot of good news on there, too. And go to his Facebook page, and there's the new Starfire Wolf Lair page. Go on there, join that, because we're going to be doing some stuff on there, including podcasts about what happened to me on there, and I'm going to include pictures of both before and after and a bunch of other things. And the only other thing I'm going to mention is the last thing about the labor thing is that when these guys were gone, when they were helping Fred, he had to go get some medication and do some other things in St. Louis, there was a thread that I followed talking to someone because some people in the Ukraine wanted me to come and talk about Chernobyl, and I got off on that because we were talking about how very few people understand what happened to the Ukraine after World War II. About 20 million people died in Germany, and of course all the other people, about 100 million people died in World War II. Well, Stalin then followed it up by killing about another 20 million people in the Ukraine, and other Slavic and Roma people that he didn't like, because he was really the key person, not Lenin anyway. People don't realize Lenin was actually useless the last 18 months of his life. He was eventually been shot in the head, but we never learned that in our classes. And Trotsky, of course, was murdered in Mexico because they knew too much about where their money was, and that's why Hitler either had to die or be turned into a mad cow like they did to Ronald Reagan. But what people don't realize, everybody hears about communist China, but it was really fascist China, and I've said this all along, because there was something called the leap forward that was done in the late 50s, early 60s, but we never learned about this. I mean, all we ever heard was better dead than red, so we weren't supposed to care. So very few people know that the Ukraine was just absolutely decimated, and they starved people to death. And this was, the Ukraine is like the Midwest here. It's the, bread basket. It's the middle class. It's the hardworking people that, and I mean, everybody in all 50 states are, but, it is a bread basket. I mean, but in Ukraine was too. Well, in fascist China, they did the same thing with the leap forward. They did a lot of bizarre things, and Mao brags that he uses Stalin's own formula, and he was insisting people create smelting pots in their own backyards and farm to create steel for the Chinese to rise up again. Well, all that did was destroy all their forests and pollute their aquifers, and it is estimated that anywhere between 30 and 50 million people during a 3-year period either died due to the toxicity of the water and the fumes, or just outright starvation. So when people want to sit there and say that, oh, yeah, you can't be for May Day because you're a commie, they got no clue how this has been so systematically orchestrated by these royal oil bankster cabal and their fascist corporate gangster buddies to do this. And they really do want to eliminate the activist people. They want to eliminate the middle class, the hardworking, the people that start having enough leisure time to ask questions, have enough leisure time to start voting for real, and thinking about their vote and maybe, being a little bit immune to some of the subliminal bullshit and maybe putting a filter on their water instead of just drinking the fluoride and taking the Prozac. So anyway, that does come back to me, but I do want people to know there's several photo albums. I use photo albums on Facebook because I put up pictures because most Americans and most worldwide people are very visual nowadays. But I always include as many YouTube, Google, whatever kind of links I can, and website links and written links, and as many books as I can find that are ebooks that are free online, so that when I put something up, I have actually done a lot of hours of research beforehand, and other people do the same stuff. So we share that stuff, we get it out there. I've got like 1,600 photo albums. I have fun ones too. You guys can go on there. There's a hilarious one about a bar stool. Looks like a crack of a girl's butt. And it's, there's funny stuff too, because you got to have a page that's fun too, and you got the neat pictures of flowers and kittens and dogs and seals and elephants, because, we can't all be gloom and doom, or, who wants to look at that? I don't want to write it. I don't want to look at it either. So it's like, you got to have the fun too. But I do want to say, not just mine, but other people too, there is actually serious information out there. And that's why they try to control things like Facebook. But our goal is to use their tools. They created the tool to do data mining. They're going to do it anyway. But let's use their tool and get the information out. Well, as long as it's still free, before they start charging for photo or how many memories. Because right now there's a whole bunch of us that are probably pushing the limit that if they ever had to charge us, we would, we'd have to have a 6-figure income just to pay for our Facebook page. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Okay. So anyway, now I'll bring that around to what happened to me. Is that, okay, before I was on Facebook, before I had gotten back on the internet, because I had actually been off for a while, taking care of my dad. He was totally bedridden for 24/7. One of the most proudest things is that in all that time, he never got one bed sore. And anybody's ever done home care knows what that's like, and they know what it's like to, it takes you months after you're caring for somebody. You could actually look at your hands again where their skin's not off because you constantly have to wash your hands so much. But taking care of him was the best thing I ever did. He died knowing he was loved. He died at home where most people should die. You don't want to put people in a dog kennel, unless some people physically can't do it. And also, some situations do require other help. But we had, my father was always somebody that was very much the helping person in the neighborhood, very active too. He'd been in the Army, always got in people's face because he stayed a sergeant because he would call the other guys college-educated idiots. Not that he had anything against college education, but he was tired of these, West Point dweebs and these other guys who were basically just people that never got shot at. They were desk jockeys, and they all wanted ribbons or promotion to do things. So, he saw enough on D-Day, the day he was decorated, and then he was at the Battle of the Bulge. He saw some of the effects of he saw the planes going over to do the fire bombing in Dresden. He literally said he gave up counting the planes, and they were incendiary bombs, basically burning humans alive, which frankly, it was actually a lot worse than Hiroshima. People actually understand it. And he was that way too. And like I said, when he got out of that, he knew Ike. He never voted for him. He said, I wasn't going to vote for him. He says he never got shot at. He was in Eisenhower's office. And like I've said before, he was out. He actually was one of the people that transported Nazis during the war. And a lot of people don't understand it. They were transported here. The low-life guys were in cattle cars, just like the Roma and the Jews and the gay guys that they were trying to use as guinea pigs in Germany. We were taking a few Italian POWs, but a lot of German POWs, and using them for experiments in Los Alamos and New Mexico. Even before, they were doing all kinds of radiation experiments, and we were doing our own WMD experiments. But the people that were riding in the fancy cars in the back of the train were big shot Nazis being treated like kings, riding just like J.P. Morgan or Rockefeller, in the back in those beautiful cars, where they probably had babes and everything else, much less booze and whatever food they wanted. And my father was offered the cush option to stay stateside and basically flipped him the bird and said, I'm going to go back because he says, I want to go back to my unit. He says, I'm not going to leave them in a foxhole while I'm over here. It's not right. So he went back, and he was that way when he knew Hoffa. I met Hoffa as a kid. And that's what brings back to the union thing. You've got to stand up for the workers' rights. And Hoffa did kind of tie you to one mobster, but people forget the longshoremen and everybody else was tied to the mob a long time ago.
Carolyn, I'm going to cut off right there because we're coming up to a break. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. When we come back, you're going to hear what she's been through. Strap yourselves in. So, Carolyn, we went to break. You were telling everybody how through about your father's experience during World War II, and then you were at the point about where you had met Hoffa and everything when you were a kid, and you were getting a little more into the history of everything, and the break came up. So go ahead, the floor is yours. Did I lose you, Carolyn? Let me make sure that they didn't bump you off here. All right.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, cool.
All right. Men in Black. Yeah, Men in Black didn't come yet.
No, I just want to make sure they didn't back you and drag you off.
Yeah, we can talk about that later, too. We done the second hour would be more fun. Yeah, basically I was very lucky.
Bagged and dragged off to a prison camp is fun.
Well, we got all kinds of stories we can talk about that are real too. And I said, I said, just like with my photo albums, what I'm telling you is all stuff that's documented, because I won't even tell you the things that can't be documented, because other than just over a beer. And by the way, you can all thank Brett because he found my Guinness Extra Stout, so I'm a lot more relaxed at the moment. And I put my famous rainbow picture on my Facebook page, so if anybody wants to see my recurring dream, go on my Facebook page and you'll see the recurring dream of what's at the end of my rainbow. All right. And there's some other funny stuff, too. There's Obama sitting there with his wealthy roommate. I don't know what's going on there. You guys can have some fun on there. And do go there and look at that. And do go and like the Starfire Wolf Lair things. We're going to get some more shows up there, and it's going to tie into Type 1 Radio and a bunch of other things. And we're going to talk about that in the second hour. But I know we wanted to get through this, so I don't stop and not get into all the stuff that's been going on. But I do want people to understand, I've said it before, you like anything about me you like, whether it's a sense of humor or anything I do, it really is. I was very, very lucky. I had two extraordinary parents, Pete and Lucille Goyda, Lucille Jones and Peter Goyda, and great uncles too, Walter Goyda, Michael Goyda, my aunt on my mom's side. These are heroic people because they all stood up for what was important. I mean, they never missed a vote. I never missed a vote. I was taken to voting booths with them, and it was important to do this, and I learned that. And reading was so important. I've told people my mom would beg her dad and mom for a little more kerosene to read a little longer. And these are people that didn't get past 8th grade, and I could stand them up against, I've been in Mensa. I could stand my parents' reading knowledge up against anybody. And I've met Isaac Asimov. I've met Masters and Johnson, all these people. Trust me. What it takes is the hunger to learn and the learning, the joy, the excitement when you're learning something you didn't know before. I mean, it's almost better than sex, It's close, And it's like people need to understand how exciting that can be in sharing information with other people. And I learned that, and I was very lucky. I had very, very excellent parents. They weren't perfect human beings, but nobody is. The only one that supposedly was perfect, look what they did to him. But anyway, I want to say that I learned that, and so in my neighborhood, too, my dad was one of these people that there was a problem, people came to him. And he stood up against things because, the union wanted him to keep going. They wanted him to be a shop steward and all this stuff. And my dad was like, I don't have time for that. I got 2 kids, and I'm trying to pay off a house because he didn't marry my mom till he was 48, and she didn't have me till she was 48. Strange bloodline. My family lives forever. People just wish we were dead. But then when you're immortal, time and age is irrelevant anyway. But, it was extraordinary. My dad would have people come into his door, and I started having that a little bit in high school. But, I mean, my dad could just solve any problem. And if he was still alive, I wouldn't be having a bit of problem in St. Louis County. I can guarantee you that. But and my mom, too, because, she was a tough gal.
Well, did you grow up in St. Louis?
Yeah, I was born in St. Louis City, and then after 1 year, my dad actually had helped a family get a 4-family flat, which was beautiful, overlooking Marquette Park. But he left his mom there, and my Uncle Walter, who had been very seriously hurt in World War II, he let him have a flat, and then he let his 2 sisters and their family take over the other 2, and my dad bought a house in St. Louis County because he wanted us to have a bigger yard and all that kind of stuff that, we could play and that kind of stuff, And so he moved out there, and he was a Teamster until he actually retired when I was in high school. I mean, my parents were old enough to be my grandparents, if that makes any sense to you. You know what I mean? When you're not born.
Your parents had you when they were older in life. That makes perfect sense.
Which was an incredible advantage. Because,
you were there to take care of your dad when he got old and sick, right?
Right. Well, yeah, and I did that 5 years, 24/7. He never got a bed sore. It's the most thing I'm proud of. I mean, everything else can fall away. Was
he connected? If he was, well, obviously he knew people. We'll put it that way. How did they start screwing with you, the police, and the sheriffs, whoever else that messed with you? Did they start doing it after he was dead or before he was dead? Because he knew people. He couldn't, if he had made at least a phone call or something to try to help you out, if he was still around?
Exactly. That's why I said if he was alive, none of this would be happening. All this happened after he had a massive stroke, which actually turned out to be caused by a combination of medications, which he shouldn't have been on. And so actually his doctor made a mistake. And then like most places, he was an old person in a hospital. And like a lot of these hospitals, the one he was at, they don't jump on it. They don't take care of things the way they should have. And like I said, he was in people's faces too. So, I mean, I can guarantee you there were a lot of people that wanted him gone a long time before he was gone. And he was warned. I mean, he was a guy, they wanted him to make him a shop steward. And he was like, no, I got to raise my kids. I'm working too many hours. He's driving extra hours to make money on the truck. And that's how I got to meet Hoffa, and I got to meet a bunch of other people. And it's hilarious because my dad, was sitting there and would literally tell these guys, you don't want me to run for office because you'll have to kill me. Because he says, I'm not going to vote the way you tell me. I'm a United States citizen, and I fought 2 wars, and he had respect for everybody. He took care of the East St. Louis routes that nobody else would touch because they were very black, very dangerous at times. And my father wasn't afraid of anybody. And he was so well-loved that his funeral, at the funeral parlor, went into overtime, for Christ's sakes. I mean, literally, we were like 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, we're going to finally shut this place down. And they're like, people were coming in. Whether they were Teamsters or guys that knew him in World War II, guys that knew him in Korea, black guys that worked in East St. Louis that came over and said, hey, man, your old man's the only guy ever treated me like a man. The only white guy ever did. I mean, we would go over at Christmas time to East St. Louis, and we were the token white people in East St. Louis. And it was hilarious, because it was like, that's why I learned it. And my dad told me this because he says, I'm going to tell you right now. He says, I've been in a foxhole with every colored person, and we all bleed the same blood. Now, I don't know.
So
I can't say that
with
about
all these connections, how did they, did they know who you are? Obviously, you really stirred up a hornet's nest. I mean, you really must have stirred up a hornet's nest. We got a few minutes before we go to break. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about what you uncovered that pissed them off so much?
Well, I got to admit, I underestimated the blowback, okay? And I thought as American citizens we had our rights. I really did. I really did believe that we had the Bill of Rights and that you could stand there and say that and have the courage of your conviction. And I actually did stand them off for a long time alone. And what it amounts to is when my mom and I were alone after Dad died, people started coming to us because when they knew my dad was bedridden, people kind of gave us some space because we were busy, obviously. And it was really funny, some people would come up and say, why don't you put him in a home? Because they were annoyed because we weren't helping them. And I'm like, well, screw you. My father comes first. But then as soon as he died, then all of a sudden other people kept coming to us. And my mom and I helped some Bosnian people in the neighborhood because some people, they thought all Bosnians that were brought over during Clinton were Muslims. And these guys were actually Christian Muslims, but they had no idea. These people were, they came from Bosnia, they must be Muslims. And people, there's a lot of prejudice. And where I live in South St. Louis is a very prejudiced area. And there was a lesbian couple getting picked on. My mom and I protected them. And to my mom, she's gone, I got to tell you, my poor mom didn't even understand totally what a lesbian was. I had to put her in front of an HBO special and I go, here, Mom, you watch this. I'm going to go to the store. Because I thought, well, just watch it by yourself. I'm going to go to the store. I came back and she's like, well, I can kind of get it. She goes, it kind of misses the punchline. But, she goes, I can respect them. They're not hurting anybody, So, that was just her attitude about it. She's like, she didn't, she's like, where's the guy? He kind of missed the end of the movie here. And, she was a cool person. She was never judgmental about anybody. But she had been through hell. My mom was one of the people, these white kids, and it's this white sex slavery thing. And that's where I really crossed the line. My mother had been a victim of that. She had been a very, very poor white family in South St. Louis. And as a kid had witnessed the Nazi Bunds. And this is important because it comes back and after my dad died. She had witnessed this stuff when, here's Charles Lindbergh being pro-Nazi. Here's Henry Ford even coming out because, he'd made the deal. He got all those contracts to make the tanks and et cetera in exchange for giving up his hemp vehicles and his hemp fuel. Okay, that was part of the deal. That's why he got all those, big, huge truck and tank contracts during World War II. And they came out to St. Louis. St. Louis was a huge hotbed.
Carolyn, we're coming up to the break. I'm going to cut you off right there. We'll pick it up on the other side. 3 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment of the first hour, tonight's episode. Carolyn, again, last segment you were talking about how well-connected your dad is. And that's important for people to realize, because they need to realize that it's not like you were just some schmuck nobody that happened to stumble upon something and stir up a hornet's nest. Your father was well-known. Your family was well-known. And you still went through hell. So obviously you really must have pissed somebody off. So what exactly did you do and find out that stirred up such a hornet's nest? Because everybody is just abuzz. They want to know what you found out. So what is it that you discovered and obviously let the cat out of the bag about that put you in such danger?
Well, I think I kind of did it in gradual steps. But first, let me explain that we were well known, but I want people to understand. It's one of the reasons why I do respect people like Nader and Hoffa, that a lot of people want to, bash these guys. Nader does not profit, doesn't live well. Jimmy Hoffa never lived anything above middle class. And I can guarantee you that that's true. And his one daughter became a judge to try to find justice. And his other son is now in the union, though. I got some issues with some of that, but that's totally another show. But, he lived comfortably, but that man never lived above middle class, because he said that the problem is when the leaders get too far ahead. And we never lived beyond lower middle class. I'll be absolutely honest with you. My father made, the highest my father ever made was $15,000 a year. And when I started working at McDonnell Douglas, when they came to me in college and offered me a job, I was so stupid. I said, yeah, I'll do windows. Because I was going to go into graduate school, but my father had retired when I was in high school. And I knew we needed money, and there were other family members that needed money. So when McDonnell Douglas came to me and offered me a job, it's really kind of funny, just to give people an idea. I mean, what I was offered was $18,200. And I said, yes, I'll do windows. I'll even get coffee. I'll do whatever. Because, I remembered that my father had only made $15,000 in his life. And I was like, geez, wait a Dad, here's this, And I literally said yes to the first, when they called me, because I went to 2 job interviews, and one was to do some sort of computer program, which I wound up doing later anyway. And that woman just loved what I did. And they gave me a test, and they said, oh, wow, we're going to train you to do this. And then I went to another guy, and I learned something called estimating. I had no idea, Popeye, what that was. And I went in there for the interview, and they're asking me strange things, like, why did you, because I had a couple of degrees from St. Louis U. I got like 3 degrees in a couple of years. And it was like, I stayed there 5 years, and I got 3 degrees. But, I didn't do the stupid MBA thing. I didn't want to go get the, I wanted to get the ones that I could actually, I got an economics degree. I got one in technology studies. I studied Russian. I studied a couple other things. But what McDonnell Douglas wanted to know is, why did you study Russian? And when you did this thesis in economics, why was it on Marxism? And, are you a Marxist? You're a communist? You know how they got to ask you those kind of things because it's aerospace defense company. And I explained why. I said, no, I wanted to understand what was going on. So even then, I was taking all these classes because my dad and mom didn't have those advantages, and I wanted to take which is what they always told me too. You don't ever take the easiest class. You take the hardest one you can do. So I was taking the labor history classes and the history of economics and the development economics, and it was really a strange thing in St. Louis U. We had people from the CFR, because I had a couple different scholarships, but I took the one at St. Louis U, one because I was in St. Louis, and I had a lot of people depending on me, so I couldn't leave. And they gave me a nice scholarship. I could have done volleyball or softball too, but I figured my body would give out before my brain did, so I did the academic one. But they put us in an honors program, which I actually consider a negative thing because I think it should be open to everybody. But I was telling Brett the other night, which is strange, you get selected for this, and we literally had people briefing the president in the morning and then coming to our college and briefing us in the afternoon, which is really bizarre. And I didn't fit in at all. I really didn't. Like I said, we lived a lower middle class life. I never was hungry at home, though. We always had a garden. But my dad worked hard. He paid off his house. He didn't marry my mom till he was 48 years old. She didn't have me till she was 48. And he paid off the house in like 1/3 of the time because he worked his butt off. And the old-fashioned way, you just paid off the bills. And he never bought anything he couldn't pay cash for. He was never lived above his means. He paid for his mother. Even when he was in World War II, he was sending his check home to his family because he had a bunch of little brothers and sisters. So, I mean, I always learned that, you do these things. But, I mean, later on, when I was at McDonald's, I found out that they used to laugh about me in personnel because they said, boy, were you stupid. You're supposed to be so smart. You took the first offer at 18.2. We were authorized to give you 30. And they said, you didn't even ask for 100. But, I mean, I was grateful to have a job, and that's what I was taught, And I thought you get on the job and you prove yourself. But, I mean, that's sort of an old-fashioned approach to things. So I just wanted people to understand when they're thinking, well, we were well-known or something. I don't want anybody to think that we were ever rich or anything like that. I mean, and that's why I said I respect people like Hoffa, because they didn't get rich off of what they were doing. Most of us were just glad to have what we wanted. And, we had, we had a TV set, we had all those kind of things, but we weren't living high on the hog. And my dad never bought anything but a used car. And he got, just like Ross Perot, my dad had the same, haircut guy. He gave better tips probably than Ross Perot, but he always went to the same guy and just got a simple haircut. It wasn't like, it was never live beyond your means.
Well, what I meant by that was that your father had so many connections that the stuff that you went through was above and beyond. It wasn't like you were just some nobody and these guys were like, we don't know this person, whatever, we don't know of her. Your family, your father was well known, so that's what I meant. And
right,
what you went through, the level of what you went through was really screwed up. So,
yeah, ironically, there probably wasn't a Democrat that didn't know my dad, because every election we would be asking you drive somebody to vote and this and that. But my dad was one of these people. He always says, well, I'm going to vote the man no matter what. But, at the time, there was some differentiation between the parties at the time. But, like I said, he was lucky. I've told you before, and we can go on to another show that we can talk about how he accidentally met John F. Kennedy, and then later on I met Teddy twice, and my dad had actually worked with Eisenhower in the war. But I was lucky, too. I just wound up meeting a lot of people, and things happen that, I don't know, there's synchronicity going on in the world sometimes because, I got things that sometimes I didn't know why I was getting them. And I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but it was like, besides being in the honors program at St. Louis U, all of a sudden, when I graduated in senior year in high school, and I was sitting there, and everybody knew me by this time, I had stood up for some people that smoked pot and our junior trip, and so the volleyball coach wouldn't let me be on the senior squad, so it's basically the vice principal put me in charge of the junior varsity, and we won state that year when the varsity sucked, and which really pissed off the coach. But I was just standing up because they were going to, basically expel the people for smoking pot, but it was okay for the people that got, caught drinking alcohol. And I said, well, this isn't right. And I was supposed to be on student council, so I stood up and got my nose in it. And so I always was that kind of person. But, here I was, that person that stood up for people. And I was very lucky that high school, too, was independent study. So people kind of knew you, but you could take weird classes and not be ostracized. I mean, we had the opportunity to take college classes in high school. You could take calculus and do all this stuff, and you weren't looked at as a nerd because since it was independent study, not everybody knew what you were doing. So it was like all of a sudden in my senior year, they were reading this thing saying that there's 146 people chosen every year as a presidential scholar. I'd never even heard of that. And apparently every year they choose 146 students across the nation, and they make them presidential scholars. And I'm sitting there, basically, I'm not kidding you, I'm cutting up in the back of the room where I'm at because we were getting ready to go to a fun gym class. And so we were just like, oh, get over with, waiting for the principal to shut up so we could go have some fun. And next thing you know, they're like, well, Carolyn Goyda, please come to the principal's office. And I'm like, oh, shit, what did I do? And it's like, to get this award, here's somebody from the governor's office and the White House in my high school to hand me this thing. And I'm like going, really? I'm walking down the aisle totally freaked out because I'm like going, wow, what do you, I was trying to figure out what the hell you say when you get to the office, because I was at the time thinking about, did they know that we, cut classes and went down to the river yesterday and we were going to get in trouble, And it was like, sometimes things happen and you don't really know why. So somehow you're on radars, and that's where all this data mining, and that's where when I got into McDonnell Douglas and saw all this stuff as an artificial intelligence fellow, you find out they're data mining this stuff, and they're tracking people from ground zero all the time. Because it's like, who the hell was I to be one of these people? I said, my dad was driving a truck. My mom put labels on Bordenheimer wine and Listerine bottles, and actually worked in a box factory, you know. And when she was really young, she had actually worked for some families, and it was very segregated in St. Louis, still is. She went to work for a Jewish family to babysit their kids, and the black housekeepers had to eat in the kitchen. And one day my mom was eating with the blacks and was told by the people living there, oh, well, you don't eat with the blacks, but you don't eat with us either. So you have a separate place too. And it was like just bizarre stuff that you grow up with. And like where I grew up, and I'm not that old, folks, there were still water fountains in the park, 5 minutes from my house, Carondelet Park, that said black and white water fountains. And the sign above the entrance to the park said Gentiles only. And this is after World War II. I'm not 1,000 years old, folks. So, I mean, people don't realize this stuff is still going on. Now, when it came to actually getting in people's faces in St. Louis County and that kind of stuff, it was gradual. And I honestly underestimated the blowback. My mom we were starting to look for the Nazi Bund. I think I started telling you about that.
I'm going to have to cut you off, Carolyn, because it's coming up to the top of the hour break. So I'm going to cut you off right there. Well, I'll have you pick it up when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for hour number 2. We'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 of tonight's episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. It is May 2nd, 2012. I'm joined tonight by Carolyn Rose Goyda. And she's been talking about her background a little bit, explaining about where she comes from, and giving a little bit of history so you guys can, I guess, better get to know her. And Carolyn, I think we're up to present day, if I'm not mistaken. So go right ahead and pick it up.
Yeah, thanks, Popeye. And I know you always have to remind me to stay focused. I really don't like talk about me, and I appreciate that. And the reason I kind of digressed a little bit there, and just to let everybody know why, is I want everybody that's listening to understand it. You know, I wasn't part of a privileged class. I wasn't a rich class. And knowing people, you know, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get rich, because you get rich when you take advantage of that knowledge. Okay, when you take advantage of it to become more aware and to do what you need to do in life, that's one thing. But, I mean, we never took advantage of that kind of thing to become, like, rich or famous or all that kind of bullshit. And life is too important to waste on just collecting things, because, let's face it, none of us get out of here alive. So, you know, it's the friendships and the knowledge and what you share is what's more important, you know, not and we never lived beyond lower middle class and middle class my whole life, okay? And that's fine with me, seriously. I mean, I had other options that would have made me a lot richer, but, you know, I like where I'm at. But, okay, as far as, like, the modern day, so you got to go, you know, we're back up to, and you mentioned that, you know, my dad died. So then it made us more vulnerable. Okay, as soon as he died, and I said his, you know, funeral was standing room only. But it's like, as soon as he died, my mom and I was trying to actually give my mom more of a life, too, because, you know, her mom lived to 104. I expected my mom to, you know, God, she's going to be around. I wanted to get her to know more things. And she wanted to find out about the Nazi Bund. So we went to look up that. And when we tried to find it, which is now a cemetery location, but I picked up this metal detector cheap at the end after Christmas at China Mart, Walmart, you know, for 1/3 of the price. So let's go there and see if we can find something and see if we can locate it. And all we did was contact the local St. Louis County Library and the Afton Historical Society, and that created a firestorm of hate calls, death threats, swastikas painted on my house, on the side of the house. That's when the dead animals started being put on our porch, which was just bizarre. And it was like, who did we alert? That this is like 60 years later, that what somebody is waiting to hear if you call the library and ask about the Nazi Bund, or, you know, you call the Historical Society. Because I was just asking, is there anything about it? Because I thought it was, you know, this was just something for my mom and I to do as two people. You know, we weren't doing this as actually particular research. Man, oh man, I couldn't believe the blowback. Well, at the same time, like I said, my dad was a stinker, and why it was important is my dad had stood up in the church when he thought it was very strange that our local church, all of a sudden, after the fish fry on Friday, all of a sudden, guys were like, "Hey, stay later," because my dad was a man's man, and they were going to show porn movies. And I remember my dad actually quit going to the church for like 2 months, and he was like, you know, this bullshit, because I got a woman at home, and if I want to watch porn movies, I watch my own porn movies. I watch porn movies with a bunch of guys, and this is just creepy. You don't watch it in the church, for God's sakes. That's, shameful or whatever. Well, now it actually ties back because years later, okay, not only did we start getting the death threats over that, I wasn't getting involved in things because people were coming to me because my dad was dead. He wasn't around. So then they were asking me to do it. And I just kind of did the same thing my dad did. I was helping people. I helped the Bosnian people. I helped a lesbian couple. There was a black and white couple that were being targeted, and we helped them. That got us more because then all of a sudden when I helped the black and white couple, which was really ironic because he was such a light-colored black man. He actually looked, the Italians in the neighborhood looked darker than him. He was just a nice guy, and people didn't want him there. And so we helped them. So then all of a sudden, besides the swastikas and the other stuff, I'm getting, N Lover painted on my side of my house and all kinds of stuff. And the local police would just write it off and say, well, it's just, high school kids pranking. But see, the local kids like this because, this was a family. My dad volunteered for, and I did the same thing with sports teams and this stuff. And, the kids always knew they could use our swimming pool because we had an above-ground pool. And I was teaching the kids in the neighborhood about growing things. I had a greenhouse that fed probably about 12 different houses at any given time in my neighborhood that needed money. We never always just gave it away. Well, I love to grow things. I had 12 types of heritage tomatoes and all kinds of peppers and all kinds of, Siberian kiwi, all kinds of stuff, strawberries and everything else. And we shared things. And I was trying to teach the kids, and I would teach them about victory gardens and, how important this stuff was. And apparently that was making people upset. And then I was defending the people in my subdivision and elsewhere. And now this is important to people everywhere in the United States. They are really using municipal ordinances, not only to target people, but to steal your homes and also to extort money. And when I discovered that, I got involved because they were, targeting elderly people and getting money out of them to get repairs done. And then they would cite people for just stupid things. Or if you're an activist, they start citing your house outrageously. And nobody will defend you because the lawyers in those municipal courts make a bunch of money. It's like, the DWI and the drinking stops on the road. Everybody agrees nobody should be out there drinking and driving. But the real reason they're doing that is to create revenue. And that's the same thing with municipal ordinances. Everybody says, well, I don't want that bum living in my neighborhood. But they don't realize that municipal ordinances are not usually used. 1 out of 10 might be against the person that's genuinely probably has some issues, and you can all work together as a neighborhood to find out what's wrong. No, they're generally used to make revenue against people, and they're generally used to target people and also to get houses away from elderly people, and not to mention run people out of town like myself. But I mean, people have to pay attention. Don't assume that these ordinance things are good. I mean, we all, they start out saying, well, we can't have junkers in the driveway. Well, the next thing you know, like in St. Louis County, you cannot legally work on your car in your own driveway. Now, how insane is that? Now, how is anybody then going to learn? That's how dads taught their daughters. That's how dads taught their sons. That's how moms taught their kids. Grandpa, uncle. In St. Louis County, you cannot work on a car, start it tonight, and if it's not back on wheels and drivable, you can get a citation that's $1,500. I mean, that's insane. And it's like if you try to grow a tomato plant in your front yard, you can get a $1,500 fine. If you try not to do grass, you try to do anything else but, petrochemical, polluted, run into the rainwater, into the water stream, into the aquifers, into your water supply, golf course grass, which a lot of people don't realize. That kind of lawn is actually very new. It came actually from the British English gardens and then golf courses. I mean, people didn't used to have those. In the past, you basically had gardens. And you had a nice yard, but nobody died if there was a dandelion. I mean, we were actually considered strange in my neighborhood from some people, not all. But some people were having a fit because they couldn't figure out why my mom and I would sit out, and all these people would flock to our yard. We had benches out front. We had roses. We got lilacs. People would come up, and I had about 12 different types of sage. People would come up for their proms to get their pictures taken against the lilacs or the roses. Backyard was full of heritage roses you can't even find anymore. But certain people had a problem with that because it was too strange for them that, wait a minute, why are there hummingbirds that will land on your hand? Okay, why do these people walk their cat on a leash? To some people that's strange. No, I don't let my cat out to kill other birds, and they got a 16-inch leash. And you see the cats are in the room we got now. These cats are fat and happy, no problem. They don't run out the door. They're happy where they're at. And whenever I had a yard, they learned their backyard, but out in the front, they were on a leash. And we had the Bosnians over. We had everybody would come there. And to some people, when you're offering those kind of solutions, you're a threat. Because I would actually get involved when they were trying to use municipal ordinance against the local elderly or the, like I said, the black and white couple. I got involved. And I came up with a proposal about how instead of targeting these people, we could, help these people if somebody really does need help and they're elderly. Well, they didn't want to do that. They wanted to use the ordinances and basically force these people into losing their homes, because then the speculators, and you'll find out most suburban is a huge tie between the real estate and bankers, and they really do take away a lot of homes. And
well, a lot of that has to do with Agenda 21 and all this other stuff, too. I'm going to cut you off right there, Carolyn, because we're going to break. We'll be back in a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Don't forget, you can hear us over on Shoutcast. We have 2 players up on the site now. We have the Flash player, and we have a player below it, which is the Shoutcast link. Or you can go to shoutcast.com. Just look up Orion Talk Radio. Or you can go to federaljack.com. I have a player up there. I have a few chat pages up there I set up so that if you go to the page, you can copy the code for the Flash player. If you have a website or blog yourself, you can put it up there, and you'll be able to provide your viewers with the Orion stream, all for free if you'd like. It's, if you'd like to use it, no pushing, but if it's there, if you'd like it, I'll just leave it up there. So again, check us out. We're on Shoutcast now. That's a big step. We're very happy. So there's 2 streams available on the front of the site. There's the Flash player, and then there's the other player below it. Check it out. All right. Getting back into it. Carolyn, you were discussing, you were helping people that they were taking their homes. And this happens a lot. I mean, it's not just the banks. A lot of this is through the county. And when you find out it all traces back to this Agenda 21 plan and other things. But you were discussing how people were losing their houses, and you yourself lost your house, or they're trying to take it from you, and you're fighting for it. And I know you actually haven't lost it yet or something like that, but you're fighting for it. What's going on there?
There's like about 50 reasons that I basically made all the possible enemies you can in St. Louis County or any other county to make you want to get out of town, and they use these things to go after you. I've kind of explained a little bit before, not only did I try to deal with the municipal ordinance, and I know that's boring to a lot of people, and they're confused because, let's face it, that kind of puts people in a discomfort zone because people don't want to go defend this, odd person on their block or something. But you got to do this, folks, because you can't let these people use rules like that. It's just like when they want to, promote all these hoarder shows just to drive people nuts. Because I'll tell you, they're using these things really to take people's houses away from the elderly, from the people that are alone. They really do target widows. They target divorced women alone, single women alone, but also guys alone, especially if they get older and elderly. And so I was actually sticking up for them because I could actually prove, and I still can prove this. And then I talked on a previous show about how I got involved with, in St. Louis, how very long-term, including my mom, the child sex slavery thing, that yes, some of it's tied to the Roman Catholic Church. That's how I originally started doing my investigation, but it ties to the local police, the media, and also the politicians because there was so much money. And I kind of talked about that. So, you figure, okay, I'm already ticking off the politicians and the crooked cops that are making money off municipal ordinances and trying to extort money from people. I'm looking into the pedophile priest issue that's getting into high funding people. We're looking into the Nazi Bund, which is embarrassing families, including George Walker Bush, because the Walker family was very deeply involved with that at the time, and so was the Bush family. So, I mean, I'm embarrassing all the wrong people. I also got in the face of the church again because they were throwing away wood and metal desks that I said we could send them to Afghanistan, we could send them to Romania. There's all kinds of places we can do these things. They didn't want to do that. They're replacing them with little plastic desks that have to be replaced every 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, I just constantly was a thorn to the wrong people. But the thing is, I never set out to be a thorn. And one thing I want to emphasize was I never tried to be a pain in the ass. Now, I looked into the pedophile priest thing to help some friends, And even that, I did. Only reason I stayed with it was I wanted to stop it. I hate the idea of these, whatever you want to call these monsters attacking little children. Okay, and then using the guise of church or something else and fundraising or something else to use these kids. And municipal ordinances, the government should not work against the people. They're supposed to be by and for the people, not to steal your home. So it's standing up for people's property rights and their privacy rights and your right to property. And you will find out you really do not own your property when you get involved with this stuff. And I know it may be boring or confusing to people, but it's very, very important because it's going on not just to me, not just in St. Louis. And I've got names of hundreds of people it's happening to. But then, I was involved with that. I was getting death threats. I was getting constantly my mom's funeral. They called me up and said, "We're glad she's dead. You're going to die too." Literally 7 of my pets got cancer in 3 years. I didn't have them all at the same time. Mizzou came out there, autopsied them all, and they said, there's something wrong here. I was getting targeted. I've talked to Hutchinson about this because I actually was getting sick. My mom was getting sick while we were getting death threats, but we couldn't identify why or what was being done. It starts to sound strange to people, but I'm telling you, folks, I am not unique, and it's not necessarily who I knew. I think it's because I didn't understand the blowback. And I literally was stepping on the toes of the most powerful, rich people. I was stepping on the toes of the politicians. I was stepping on the toes of not good police. And there are very good police in St. Louis County and where I'm at now that are helping me. There are good police. But let's face it, everybody knows there's always been cops on the dole. They help the Pinkertons and they help beat up union guys and everything else. I was in the face of everybody you don't want to get in the face of, crooked cops. They came to my house after we'd already talked about it, and neighbors were standing up for me saying, "Leave her alone, leave her alone." We had a meeting set up with several neighbors and me that were going to protect me and say, "Leave her alone" on a Tuesday. Instead, on Friday morning at 11 o'clock, they came to my house, tried to break down the door. It was a 35-minute standoff where I refused to open the door. Had to call other police agencies to come and call these people off. And it was proven. We had witnesses to this. Nothing ever happened to them. They said, "I'm sorry, it was a mistaken house." Even though the whole time they were talking to me through the door, they're sitting there telling me by name, calling me by name. They started out saying, "Oh, it's FedEx with a delivery." And I'm thinking, no, it ain't. I know my FedEx delivery guy. Because I used to get,
Wow, that's like one of their favorite routines is the FedEx delivery thing.
Yeah, because I was getting bed pats from my dad. I knew the FedEx and UPS guys by first name basis. They used to come to my house and get coffee. They knew how to get in my house because they used to come in the back. If I was too busy, they'd put it under the patio. So I'm thinking, who the hell is this? And I'm not expecting a delivery. I'm living by myself at this point. And they literally came to the house and they tried to kick it down. The door is still slightly off its hinge. They were scratching on it. They were banging on the glass window. And it was absolute goon squad. And I refused to open it. And I have witnesses to the phone call.
What did they say was their justification for coming in and,
They ultimately said it was a mistake because I refused to open it. God knows what they'd have done if I had. And I didn't have a cell phone at the time. I just had one of those, phones you walk around your house with. But I called enough people to have them hear this. And I had to call other police agencies to say,
Was this before or after you were attacked physically?
That one was actually before.
So this incident happened before that?
Yeah. And okay. I've got proof of it. I even have a written apology from one of the superiors of the police, but they refused to take this to the police investigation where they would have been charged with something because they said, well, it was just a mistaken house. But then at the time, why are they calling me by name and telling me, open the door, we're going to drag you out by your hair, kill your cats, and burn your house down? So, they were talking to me, personally directing it at me. And when I had one other police officer on the phone, which was overheard by other people and witnessed by people, saying, what the hell are you doing there? They said, we just thought we'd come over and shake things up a bit. And frankly, they sounded like they were drunk. But, what the hell would they have done? I'm not going to open the damn door. And I was glad I had 2 bolts on the door because, seriously, without I had very expensive deadbolts. And it was after all the death threats I put on the deadbolts. Otherwise, I bet they would have got through that door. And who knows? They probably would have shot me and said my phone was a gun or, we mistook it for a gun or something. They can say anything they want. when it got
Well, they
through.
accidentally pop little girls now while they're sleeping on a couch when they kick indoors. So I think, and then they don't get in trouble either, by the way. So I don't really think they care about shooting somebody innocent in one of their quote unquote SWAT raids.
Right. And if they got away with it, they probably would have got rewarded. And,
it's creepy how they called you by name and then they said, "Oh, it was a mistake. We didn't mean to." That's more like harassment than anything else. All right, come on, Carolyn, we're going to break. I'm going to cut you off right there. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So, obviously, Carolyn, the harassment that you received from the SWAT visit, that I don't think that was... it just doesn't sound random, you know what I'm saying? I know now maybe it's more random where they actually go to the wrong house, but not if they're calling out your name. You know, it doesn't sound like they were at the wrong house to me. So...
Oh, I mean, see... That's what I was trying to tell people. This can happen to anybody if you make the wrong enemies. And that's why municipal ordinances are dangerous. And don't be in favor of them because you want the lunatic at the end of your block to get a fine or something because he's got a basketball court up, because they're going to turn those around. The more rules you got, that's the one part of libertarian that's very real. With the less rules, you don't need all these rules. All you need to do is understand and love your neighbors and know your neighbors and talk it out. You don't need to bring Big Brother into this, because Big Brother then... the corrupt part of Big Brother will use those to destroy people's lives. And not just mine, but other people too. And, you know, I know people are a little bit confused, going, well, what's this got to do with it? But, I mean, seriously, now picture yourself in your own home by yourself, 11 o'clock in the morning. And I actually was on the radio at the time. I was writing some stuff for George Norrie on Coast to Coast. I was writing for Out There TV, so I was up at night. 11 o'clock in the morning is my evening. And these guys had something planned in mind, because what the hell were they going to do if I'd open the door? Because it was proven that there was no warrant, no ordinance violation, no citation. There was no legal justification for them even to be on my property. And then later on they came. I've got pictures of them coming to my house. What they brought at one time, 11 vehicles, 3 armed police officers. They videotaped it. They refused to release the videotape, where all of a sudden they decided they had to cut down a bush. And they did this the day they wanted to take me to court, because they knew it would absolutely just, you know, how do you go to court when this is going on? And later on they said, oh, I'm sorry, this was a mistake. And they would park county trucks out in front of my driveway so that I couldn't go to visit my uncle that was dying in hospice. And I would have to call the county and says, why is this truck parked in front of my driveway? And I'm talking about a big dumpster. It's not like you can go drive around this thing. It wasn't like a little Jeepster. I'm talking about a huge dumpster that the counties use. And the time that they came to my house, it's 11 vehicles and the armed police officers. I mean, I have still pictures, which I took. They were taking video, and I've asked through Freedom of Information and Sunshine Laws for those videos, and they keep lying. And they won't give the police records of my calls to the police. They would come and vandalize my house and then try to come out and cite me, because they would literally come to my house, dump my trash in my driveway. Like, yeah, I'm going to dump my own cat litter in my own driveway. What am I, nuts? And I'm like, I would be out there sweeping it, and I would have to call my local precinct and say, I am cleaning this up. It happened this morning. I'm out here now. I have to call you. And I would get them angry, because I would insist that they make it a record. And that's what you got to do, folks. You got to make records. I had to make it a record of the police department on file that, okay, I was vandalized again. And they would tell me, oh, Carolyn, you're screwing up our statistics. You know, you're screwing up. You know, we get our bonuses based on this. And I said, then you deal with the crooks. Because I said, you guys know who's doing it. It's not kids. Because I said, you know, they're going into a locked gate, cutting the bolt off of a lock, getting my trash, dumping it, and then they try to come out and give me a citation saying, oh, you got garbage in your yard.
Yeah, that sounds like they're the ones doing that, because I've actually seen that kind of behavior before, where they'll go out and dump garbage cans on someone's lawn. Like, literally, they'll walk right up, kick someone's garbage over, rip the bags open, spread it all over the lawn, and go, look at this. Look what kind of mess you have on your front yard. This is against city ordinance, whatever, and start writing you citations, because it starts to build a paper trail against you.
I had to have to a separate instance where I had a guy. This was right after the first one. It was one of the 2 officers that came that tried to break down my door. About 4 days later, when the precinct was aware and very embarrassed about what was happening, because the precinct knew me, okay? And they knew I was an honest person, always paid my taxes, never violated any laws, and I was a good citizen. I later had this guy show up at 1 o'clock. And people that know me know, because I wasn't stupid. By this time I was on the internet. I wasn't on Facebook, but I was in a bunch of Yahoo groups. And like I said, I was writing some stuff for Out There TV. I was writing stuff I was the producer for Veritas. I was writing stuff for George Norrie and some other people, Art Bell. I'm sitting there telling these people there's someone right now trying to bang on my door at 1 o'clock in the morning, because, Coast is on from 12 to 4. So I'm like going, I'm not going to open the door. And I'm looking out again, and I'm calling I'm typing this in. Okay, I will call the police so that people would know what I was doing. So I'm like covering myself. Anybody around, please show up, that kind of thing. And I went out there. I didn't go out right away, but I looked out, and I'm like, I don't see anybody. I'm looking out through the blinds and the drapes. The local police guy told me, well, okay, we'll send somebody, Carolyn, we'll send somebody over. And before he got there, one of the guys who tried to kick down my door showed up. He's not even in our local precinct. He's coming up and wanting to come up, and he says, well, I want to come in and talk to you. And I said, no. And I stood on my porch, and he was down by the curb. And I said, no, you do not have property to come. You do not have my authority to come on my property. You don't have a warrant. You get back on the public street. You cannot come onto my driveway.
How did he explain the fact that he was out of his jurisdiction?
Oh, well, he just said he heard the call, like as if he was responding to my call about somebody knocking on the door. And I told him, I said, I'm not surrendering my Third and Fourth Amendment rights. I'm not allowing you on my property. You have to stay on the public street because the local precinct is on their way. And, this guy is literally drawing his gun, telling me, you stay there. I'm going to come up and talk to you. And I said, I'm going to walk into my house and shut my door. You're not allowed on my property. Because I'm thinking, I don't want this son of a bitch shooting me on the porch. And I'm like going, and throw down gun. So right about that time, here comes the regular, it's not a black and white in St. Louis. It's actually a brown car. And here comes a regular precinct officer, doing his rounds. He gets the call. He comes up, and I'm on my porch. Here's this guy on my driveway, on my property, committing a crime already. Because he's on my property. That officer gets out of his car and says, stand still. To him, not me. And says, who the hell are you? And this guy, pulls out from underneath his T-shirt a badge. You know how they do that? And he's like, oh, I'm Detective so-and-so, and I'm attached to the Municipal Ordnance Police, and I heard the call, and I came here to help. And the uniformed officer, because the first guy was in street clothes, uniformed officer takes his gun out and points it, not at me, at him, and says, holster that weapon now. Because, he can't see what the guy's holding up. The guy could be lying, He could have got a badge off the internet, He's telling the guy, you holster that weapon now. And he says, you identify yourself and you give me your badge number. Because he goes, I don't know you. My precinct cop is saying, I don't know you. And so this guy's going, hey, chill out, man. I'm going to, and he's like trying to be cool with the other cop. He holsters his weapon. He walks back out. The precinct officer tells me, just stay there, stay on the porch. You're fine. You're safe. He does not holster his weapon. He's still got his gun on the asshole. Because he don't know. He could fucking shoot him and then say, I shot him. He's not stupid. So he's sitting there with his gun out saying, you identify yourself by name and badge number. So then this guy is like, he's retreating. He goes, well, hey, I was just driving by and I heard the call of a potential, house, invasion. And I thought I was just going to help you guys out because I'm actually off duty. But I was just, nearby, And it's like, what the F, but the local precinct guy was cool. And he told him, he says, you got two options. You're going to get in your vehicle and leave, or you're going to have to go to the precinct with me. So the other guy got in his, he was going to let this cop ride, obviously. He did not want to arrest another cop. So this cop takes off. So then I'm talking and I'm looking at the, the uniform cop going, well, I guess I'll come out there. And I'm like, hey, is it cool? And he says, yeah, you're all right. And I was talking to him and I said, you know what's going on? And he goes, we know what's going on. He says, but we can't arrest other cops. He goes, you got to start putting up, surveillance cameras or something else. Because he goes, we can't do that.
Yeah, they can't do it. They can do it. They just won't do it. There's a big difference. It's not that they can't. He feels he can't. The whole police union and all that other blue wall of silence crap.
But the ironic thing was, he probably might have saved my life that night.
Well,
so he
probably,
was being a good.
You never know what that guy was going to do. I'm going to cut you off, Carolyn. Stay right there. Final segment coming up. So, Carolyn, who knows what would have happened to you if that local cop hadn't pulled up and questioned this other out-of-place cop who he had no idea who it was and who this dude was.
Well, I mean, you're not recording.
Once he flashed his badge and everything like that.
You're not recording this, right? You're not recording this, right?
What do you mean?
What we're talking about right now?
We're back on air.
Oh. I'm sorry. I didn't know we were back on air. I'm sorry.
No,
I thought we were still there.
It's okay. I wouldn't say his name or anything. I know what you said during the break. I wouldn't mention any names or anything like that because I wouldn't want to get you in trouble. But can you imagine if that cop hadn't stopped, that local cop hadn't stopped this other guy from outside of his jurisdiction? Who knows what would have happened? Because you were attacked, and you had a horrific attack happen to you, and other things, and then there was some courtroom drama as well, I believe. Correct?
Right, and this is why I was asking if we were still on the air, because I want to be very careful not to screw up any legal thing in the future, because I'm very careful about putting the names out. And actually, like a lot of people would be mad at the cop that, didn't do more to that cop. But you got to understand, he's probably putting his life at risk too. And he probably maybe saved my life that night, because that cop, what he was doing there, there's absolutely no reason why that cop was at my house that night. And, like I said, luckily I was online and I was telling people what was going on. And I've gotten people that said, why didn't you go out there with a gun in either of those incidents? But you got to understand, you use that level of defense very, very carefully. And I want to make it clear, I do not have a weapon. Anybody ever accuses me of having a weapon on me or ever using a weapon, I'll never kill myself. I'm not going to do anything stupid. And I will never draw on a police officer. If I ever get shot, they're shooting me. I'm not shooting at them. I'm not stupid. And that's when people said, well, I would do this. And I'm like, no, if I'd have walked out on that porch with a weapon in my hand, I'd probably be dead today. I honestly believe that. And yeah, they did come back later. But see, this time, when they sent the person to attack me, they were very shrewd and smart about this. What they had was another person they had by the short hairs, because this guy had a police record. It was tied together to the municipal ordinance police, his father's house and everything else. They were threatening his father's house. So they had this guy locked up to do this. And people said, well, wait a minute, you used to teach karate. How could you be attacked? Well, it's really easy because, I had hired somebody and they got to this guy because my mom and I, like I said, we help a lot of people. And this was somebody we had helped that I had known and I had hired in the past and it done work. Now, I knew he had a police record, but that is not a, exclusionary thing to me. I volunteered at probation parole to help people in college. I always wanted, people have a right to a second chance. You shouldn't judge people. And I honestly believe that if he had not been put up to this, it would never have happened. But yeah, anybody, I don't care who you are, because I used to take karate and teach karate, and my father was a drill sergeant, and two of the three guys that I was engaged to, unfortunately don't get engaged to me, you won't live long, but one of them was in both the judo and karate and the Olympics, and also special forces. And the last one that died in the Gulf War also was in special forces. So I knew how to defend myself. But, when you're hiring somebody, you turn around, somebody hits you in the head with something, make a long story short, I'm sorry, when you're not expecting it from somebody that you have at least some awareness of and you're not anticipating violence from, I don't care what training
your guard is down.
Right. And I have to admit, I really to this day don't know what I was hit with, whether it was, I don't know if it was a, crowbar, wrench, whatever. It was something metal. That's all they told me later. That, obviously it knocked me out. I was on my hardwood floor. And I've had enough survival training that my first thought is, and I remember thinking this, get up, or you're dead, or worse. So, I mean, I literally did try to get up. You know, you're on, you know, you fall face forward, and anybody's ever had training, you're being told, get up. You're shouting that in your head, get up, you know. And I did try, but I always had long hair, and I even had longer hair then. And it was so easy because it was like, you know, I'm half stunned already. I've had other concussions, so it blow wind at me. You know, fart in my room with me, you can knock me out. I mean, I've had so many concussions. So it's like, you know, the guy basically just grabbed my hair and then slammed my head into the hardwood floor. So, I mean, after that, I was basically useless. I've got pictures of it. I had bloody teeth. I was bleeding from my ears, my nose. I mean, everything you can imagine. And he was there for 18 hours. And yeah, he strangled one of my cats in front of me and said, if I don't leave town, next time it's going to be you. So, I mean, obviously, he's referring to what they're telling me I have to do, which is leave town. So this guy was put up to do this. And I've even got, I don't want to go into a lot of the stuff that'll screw up the legal stuff later, but even his ex-wife told me, and she's willing to testify. Okay. So we've got enough legal stuff without going into a lot of detail. But I mean, it's in a stalemate because at first I really did try to stay in my house and fight them. But seriously, after that attack, after getting animals killed, and then they were putting other wild animals killed on my front porch. And you know, there's only so many times, and every single day you wake up and you got to clean trash off your driveway. Or at one point there was 36 rolls of toilet paper in my roses. And, you know, I mean, just constant stuff that literally you physically cannot deal with anymore. And then, you know, I thought I had dealt with it. I'd come down to Columbia. I spent 3 months. I had to heal after a car accident too, which some people are suspicious about, but I can't prove it. But, I was here. That accident caused me to have a broken hip and another concussion, obviously, because my Subaru it was a Subaru built in Indiana, by the way, by American workers. I made sure that any car I bought was built by American workers. And who the CEOs and the stock people are, they're all crooks anyway. But I made sure it was made here. So if anybody says you had a Subaru and you should have bought a General Motors, yeah, right, you bought a General Motors built in Mexico or Brazil or, you know, someplace else. I bought a Indiana-built Subaru Forester. Anyway, but that got screwed up, and I had come back down here, had found property, was leaving St. Louis County, and reluctantly, because I had held them off. But I had literally 3 lawyers in a row, a federal judge, a St. Louis County judge, off record, but I got him to write me an email. I wasn't stupid. So I at least got him to write me this. They were all telling me, you have got to leave town because nobody can protect you. This is the United States, for Christ's sakes. I'm talking to a goddamn federal judge who's telling me to leave town. I said, what, I got to get out of Dodge? I said, my father fought 2 wars. I served this country. When you asked me to go to the Soviet Union, I did. I'm like, this is bullshit. I have rights. And they said, you'll win the battle and you'll lose the war, and what you lose is your life. My lawyers told me that. That's why I've been in hotels for 3 years, and it's taken every penny of my savings, including my IRA. And it's like people go, well, I would have fucking stayed there. Well, okay, you want to stay there, and then you wind up like the people out in Ruby Ridge. You wind up like the people. They
probably would have. They already proved that they were prepared to do violence the first time they came to your house with a SWAT team and pretended that they had the wrong house, even though they called your name out when they were, you know, trying to kick your front door in. So obviously that was a nonchalant way, I guess you could say, of saying, Carolyn, we have our eye on you. You know, we're willing to use violence. So, a lot of people, they like to lay judgment, Carolyn, but until they've gone through that kind of experience themselves, you know what I mean? That's why it's a lot of people have said when you've come on in the past and you've talked about some of the stuff you've been through, people have told me that they were like, man, that lady's strong, that she's gone through all that. Not only that she can keep on going on, but that she can talk about it. And I agree. And I think that hearing what you've been through and hearing and it's important that you explained to the listeners about your past and your background so that they can understand that, you know, even somebody that is, you know, whose family is well liked in the community and who, you know, it's one of those, you grew up in the area. It doesn't matter. It can happen to you. It does. You know, you represent what happened to you is an example that it can happen to anybody out there that speaks their mouth about anything and pisses anybody off for whatever reason, for whatever their activism is. It doesn't matter, if you ruffle the wrong feathers. Sometimes it gets really violent and really freaky, and sometimes they'll go to no end to punish you for having the balls to stand up to them. You know what I mean? And it's encouraging for people to hear you be able to talk about it and realize that they're not alone in their experiences. Because I know other people, other activists that have gotten the runaround and gotten somewhat of the same treatment, and they don't have a voice. They think that they're by themselves. You know what I mean? And I know that you were encouraged that other people are inspired by you, which is important. That's why I'm glad you were, willing to come on and discuss some of this horrific stuff. I mean, you really are. You're a very brave lady, Carolyn, and I know not only me, but other people can appreciate what you've been through. And I got to say, you are tough for going through what you've gone through. Is there? We only got a few minutes left. Is there any? You have a YouTube website? Give out the Facebook stuff again. Anything you want to plug really quick? Go ahead.
Really quick, Carolyn Rose Goyda, my Facebook page. I put stuff out there, and it's not about just it's about other stuff. But the Starfire, Wolf Flare stuff, we're going to finally putting out some podcasts, and you and I talked about we'll do some YouTube stuff. And, I want people to know, and like, so we can talk about it on another show if you want, the kangaroo court stuff that happened to me that I can tell people what I did, and that's why it's still in limbo. I'm in a hotel, but it's fine. I've learned a lot. I've not wasted this time, and I can tell people how to deal with this so you're not wasting your time. You can turn it around, because right now I'm grateful because I have learned. And what's happened to me, I can.
Carolyn, I'm going to have to cut you off because we're out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, check her out on Facebook. She will gladly have a conversation with you. And make sure to tune in Friday.